provocation on that border. I believe what is happening on the border today is intentional.
We have people in the United States of America that breed children in order to sell them.
Our own government is facilitating the absolute destruction of the American immigration system, and I can prove it point by point. I'm unafraid to speak the truth. This is just data-driven and experience-driven.
Nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime, Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before.
May God bless our commander-in-chief, and may God bless the United States military. They did it. President Trump gave the order to take out 3 of those nuclear facilities in Iran. One of them included Fordow. That facility deep below the mountain, they needed bunker busters to get to it. We're told those B-2 bombers are now well outside of Iranian airspace. So for all of you out there who did not want America to be involved, listen to me. We are now. So the reality is, let's get behind President Trump. Let's get behind America. My belief is nothing is going to come of this other than the fact that Iran will be ultimately debilitated when it comes to getting a nuclear bomb. I support President Trump. He needs your support as well. Trust President Trump. He's been right about everything up until now. So again, if you didn't like the idea of the United States getting involved, that's behind us. We are now. And I believe President Trump made the right decision on this one. Thank you, President Trump. Thank you to the United States military. And God bless all of you out there. It's a somber night, but an important night. President Trump, our commander-in-chief. Make America great again.
And the second thing is, Kristen, I certainly empathize with Americans who are exhausted after 25 years of foreign entanglements in the Middle East. I understand the concern, but the difference is that back then we had dumb presidents, and now we have a president who actually knows how to accomplish America's national security objectives. So this is not going to be some long, drawn-out thing. We've got in, we've done the job of setting their nuclear program back. We're going to now work to permanently dismantle that nuclear program over the coming years, and that is what the president has set out to do. Simple.
First, I want to start off with just the foundation of this entire war, what seems to be that Iran has weapons of mass destruction, basically. I mean, this is kind of Bush 2.0. Actually, I'll play a little reminder video for you. It's like, oh yeah, why do we get into all these Middle Eastern wars? Oh yeah, this guy right here.
I take the threat very seriously. I take the fact that he develops weapons of mass destruction very seriously. I remember the fact that he has invaded 2 countries before. I know for a fact that he's poisoned his own people. He doesn't believe in the worth of each individual. He doesn't believe.
So, okay, there you go. We've been through this whole storyline before of weapons of mass destruction. And we later realized that that was kind of a lie to justify getting into a Middle Eastern war and making Dick Cheney and Halliburton, probably billions and billions of dollars, and seizing oil rights and seizing probably some ancient artifacts that were over there that we want to get our hands.
Israel didn't kick their regime change habit with Iraq or Libya or Syria, it seems. They need another fix. But Matt, this isn't a regime change war. It's about Iran's nuclear program. I wish that were true, but it's not. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene opined that maybe Netanyahu is so feisty about regime change in Iran because he was facing regime change in Israel.
It's not being reported enough that on Thursday, they held a vote in the Knesset, and it was only by 2 votes that Netanyahu won. If he had lost, they would have had another election in Israel, and the polling shows that he would lose if an election were to occur today. That vote happened last Thursday. And then Friday, Israel attacked Iran. That's why the bombs are falling, and it seems very political.
Isolationist campaign. What he promised us was we would put America first. And I think there are still voices in this administration. You've still got J.D. Vance. You've still got Tulsi Gabbard. You still, RFK Jr., you still got calmer heads that could prevail.
They were not persuasive in this case, clearly.
Well, somebody was persuasive. AIPAC is very persuasive. For instance, the Israeli lobby in Congress. If you look at my colleagues' feeds now, they all look the same. They're all tweeting the same message that we've got to support Israel and we've got to do this. My question is, does 3 bombings and we're done with Iran's nuclear ambitions? Is that the 2 weeks to slow the spread of 2025? Is this, we were told 2 weeks to slow the spread then. Now we're told it's just going to take 3 bombings. But what happens when Israel gets bombed again?
Welcome to Truth with JJ Carrell. There is a massive, massive divide in the MAGA movement. I played you 3 videos. That was a long, cold intro, but I had to. 3, I did 3 and 3. 3 videos proclaiming the absolute need to attack Iran, and 3 saying, hold on a second. And the more and more I read and look at the percentages, I think is more and more tilting to what in the hell are we doing? Donald Trump came out this weekend and said, we bombed them, successful, now we want peace. And now on Sunday, he said, well, it's time for a regime change. Okay, hold on a second. Nobody votes for that. No one wants that. I am a absolute Trump supporter and MAGA guy. However, when you look at how these things evolve, how this all plays out, it's identical to Iraq. It's identical. It's identical to every single Middle East war that we have found ourselves in. Weapons of mass destruction, nuclear armaments. They're going to come kill us if we don't kill them. All we're going to do is do a preemptive strike. Bam, we're in a preemptive strike. Oh, now look, we've seen how bad they are. The leaders, we need a regime change. And then after regime change rhetoric comes boots on the ground. And then here we go again. I'm not saying Donald Trump can't walk and chew gum or do two or more things at one time. Absolutely can. However, this will sidetrack everything he's trying to do domestically. And I could sit here for the next week's show just enumerating and discussing one domestic issue after another that is destroying our country. Why are we not pouring all of our effort into what we need to do? Oh, and I forgot one other very important aspect of the Middle East wars is it all begins with Israel. Do we bomb Iran if Israel doesn't bomb Iran first and start the wheels in motion? that now I don't see how you stop them. I really don't. And we're going to get into how Iran's going to fight us. They're going to hit us on multiple fronts, but one front is going to be inside of our walls, as I'm going to show you shortly. And these numbers are grotesque, meaning I don't believe them at all, of how many Iranians are in our country, how many special interest aliens are in our country. This is a very, very bad situation. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Because Israel feels as if we need to go to war? I know this is, I have to say this out loud, and it's a point I'm going to make too, because this is how absurd it is. Because I criticize Israel, somehow, and this goes to anybody that's criticizing Israel, well, we hate Jews. Well, we're an anti-Semite. I don't agree with what the hell's going on in Sudan. Am I getting Sudanese people? I think Justin Trudeau and that new left-wing nut job that's their prime minister, I can't stand their government. Am I against Canadians? This is the propaganda that we're going to get. The moment you criticize Israel, you're an anti-Semite. The moment you criticize Netanyahu, that's come to our country, inside of our power structure, with our politicians, and lied to us for decades, well, you're an anti-Semite. This is part of the propaganda. This is part of the lie. This is the part of the indoctrination. And this is the part of the conditioning to keep your mouth shut as the world begins to burn and the wealthy become more wealthy and the powerful become more powerful. And all the while, you just shut up and work and pay your taxes. That's it. Just shut up. And the horrible thing is, for the left and for the right, this is not just a Democrat thing. My God, this is an absolute Republican thing, is they can't control the narrative anymore because of podcasts, because of platforms like this, because of X. They can't. You're seeing more truth now come out. I don't even use Google anymore, guys. It's a waste of my time. I tested it last week. I hit a couple big topics, and I just saw one propaganda piece after another pop up to search, having nothing to do with what I asked. I put the same terms into the X search, and here's the beauty of the X search. I don't get mainstream media garbage. I get investigative journalists. And if I don't know them, then I can just quickly do background search on them and go, okay, this individual is legitimate. Yep. Okay. In fact, I can go back and spot check their videos back 3, 4, 10 years and go, oh, this person's been saying the exact same thing for a very, very long time. He citates everything. She citates everything. This is the new way of getting information. Google is just a waste of time. DuckDuckGo is the same. And as I go through this, and as I'm watching the Iran war, and trust me, we are at war. And once war starts, I forgot who said this, but it was brilliant. I'm sure many people have said it, but I just heard it from one person and it struck me, is once the war begins, throw all your plans away because you have no idea what's going to happen. None. Are you telling me that that giant country, Iran, hasn't tabletopped this? Meaning hasn't sat down like our country and said, okay, what happens? Let's play this scenario out. Israel's going to bomb us. And they're going to make coordinated attacks and strategic plans with the United States of America. The United States of America is going to attack us. What are we going to do? How are we going to do that? Or are you to believe that the massive country of Iran is just flying off the hip, shooting from the hip. And like, we didn't plan for this. Oh my God, what do we do? Okay, let's just, I don't know. Of course not, man. Of course they've already thought this out. What are they going to do? One of the things that they're going to do is they're going to attack us from within. That's an absolute. Watch this video between Tom Homan and Maria Martelloma on Sunday, talking about how many people have been let into our country by Joe Biden these last 4 years.
Can you assess that issue particularly? How many Iranians are in the country that are in sleeper cells trying to do bad to America right now?
Well, look, you and I have talked about this many times. I said the last 4 years, my biggest concern was this open border was the biggest national security vulnerability this country's ever seen. So I pulled numbers this morning just from a CBP under Joe Biden. There was 1,272 nationals of Iran released in the country between OFO and the Border Patrol. And you compare that to the Trump administration, zero. Right, zero releases. And right now, because of President Trump's leadership, we have the most secure border in my lifetime, most secure border in the history of this nation. So we have a secure border. That was President Trump's big win on securing this nation. So we're not releasing people in this country. Special interest aliens aren't crossing that border undetected. But under Joe Biden, we had over 10 million people cross that border. But my biggest concern from day one, beyond the fentanyl, beyond the sex trafficking women and children, were the 2 million known gotaways. Over 2 million people crossed that border. We don't know who they are, where they came from, because they got away, because Border Patrol is so overwhelmed with the humanitarian crisis that Biden created that over 2 million people crossed the border and got away. That is my biggest concern, and that's what created the biggest national security vulnerability this country's ever seen.
And you have that on surveillance, seeing people get away. Do you have a sense of where they went?
No, the intelligence community under President Trump has been on this since day one. What gives me any comfort at all is that you don't have Christopher Wray there, you got Kash Patel there. You don't have Alejandro Mayorkas there anymore, you got Kristi Noem, and you certainly don't have Kamala Harris as a border czar. So President Trump brought a great team, been on this since day one. Do we know where every one of the 2 million are? No. We don't know who they all are. We don't know why they're here, where they came from. But we do know Border Patrol intelligence for the last 4 years, they found prayer mats south of the border. They found identification from people from Iran, Turkey, Uzbekistan, Syria, south of the border. So we know that some terrorists have crossed that border. We'd be a fool to think zero cross. The thing is, though, we got President Trump as a commander-in-chief who's put all resources on that. That's why President Trump from day one, ICE operations, despite what the left media says, he has been focused on national security threats and public safety threats. And between ICE and the Bureau, we've removed thousands of national security threats because of President Trump's leadership on this.
Yes, that's right. Tom, thank you very much.
Let's be very clear. I'm a huge Tom Homan fan, but if you believe, and you ask any Border Patrol agent, how many getaways, illegal aliens across the border and absconded with no detection, how many in Joe Biden's 4 years? I would guarantee you 100% of the Border Patrol agents would laugh at you if I said 2 million. Most all of these Border Patrol agents would say between 10 and 15 million. 80% of the border was unmanned at any given time. Let me repeat that. 80% of the border was unmanned at any given time. The checkpoints were down. That means 1,600 miles of the 2,000-mile southern border was completely empty. Not one law enforcement officer on duty. And the idea that 1,200 plus people were Iranians is laughable. This is serious. This is very serious. You have people that are in the know saying that Al-Qaeda terrorists are here in America. I am telling you, as I've told you before, over 200,000 special interest aliens have crossed the border, were arrested, and then released by the Border Patrol. At the same time, I received videos, pictures, statements from former colleagues and people that found me that stated, dude, you have no idea. People are on special interest aliens on that list. We're releasing them and we're not labeling them as special interest aliens, and we all know they are. So that number of 200,000, JJ, is a bogus claim. I would feel comfortable stating in front of Congress that at least 1 million special interest aliens cross the border. At least. Sleeper cells by the thousands are in America. You can say, "Oh, that's crazy. You have are you black pilling? Where's your proof?" Where's my proof? 30 million people crossed the border in 4 years and were released or left absconded. There are piles, not just a few passports and IDs and prayer rugs. There are piles of passports, IDs, prayer rugs from the Middle East stacked up on the southern side of the border. Now, when you crossed and you took 7,000-mile trip to get to a border, why in God's name would you discard all of your identification after a 7,000-mile trip? Wake up, America. Wake up. We have never been this vulnerable before. Look what happened in Michigan.
Oh.
Logan, is Shannon here now?
Come on, everybody to the back. Please, everybody come to the back. Come to the back. Don, they gotta come. They gotta come. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Go. Out, I don't think is a good idea. Come on here.
Don't worry, I'm sure it's some white nationalist, I would assume, right? I would think that it's a white nationalist, drove his car into the truck, to the church, filled with grandmas and grandpas and little children doing a children's play. Tom Homan knows it. ICE agents know it. Our government knows it. Our intel agencies absolutely know it, that we have terror cells, unlimited terror cells here in America. Absolutely. It's just a matter, are they going to get a go sign? I pray I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong. But just common sense says that there's no way I can be wrong on this. This is just, you invited the world into your country in 4 years, and you're expecting peace and kumbaya? Nobody can be this stupid. And no one is this stupid. They did it on purpose. They destroyed the United States of American sovereignty on purpose. Before I go to the next segment, I want you to please support the sponsors, the organizations, the companies that support us at Worldview Tube. And one of them is Bella Grace. Shop Bella Grace. I take Bella Grace every single day in the form of the elixir. Why? First, Dr. Lucky said, hey, just take it for 30-day trial and see if you like it. See if there's any changes in your gut, in your ability to combat inflammation. Because as Dr. Lucky said, inflammation is the impetus, is the genesis of all of your problems, all of them. I have a spot on my arm I would say about 2 inches by an inch. Eczema, I think, 30 days gone. Gone. I have no other explanation. None. Zero. I use the Bella Grace elixir. I have nieces that use all their other products. for skincare, but that's what I use. I use the elixir, and I use the sleep restorative gummies to help me slow my mind, as I've needed this weekend as we begin to go down that horrible path called war. ShopBellaGrace.com/truth. Go ahead, Logan, if you could play this commercial. I believe it's with Dr. Lucky.
As a practitioner with a very large practice, at the very end of the day, I tended to be a little bit worn out. I wasn't covering from taking care of patients. In January, before we pre-launched the company, I was one of the very first people to get the 15-day samples. And right away, I was connected to the Bella Grace Collagen Elixir. Just an overall feeling of wellness, but also a little more energy. I recovered in my workouts, sleeping just more soundly, and then waking up the next day ready to take it on. For me, it was the power of three: the cat's claw, the astaxanthin, and of course, the best, most studied Verisol collagen on the market today.
ShopBellaGrace.com/truth. And the other sponsor that I love all of ours, but I have like 3 or 4, and this is one that I really trust and I encourage everyone to go to, is PatriotsMade.com. I'm waiting for my next guest to come on, so I'm just going to talk about Patriots Made just for a second. Look what's happened across our globe. War. Who's funding it? Look at the civil unrest in America today. Who's funding it? Well, I'll tell you this. Black Lives Matter, Defund the Police received billions with a B from our corporations here in America. Defund the police. Think of that. If I told you 10 years ago corporations are going to back defunding the police, you would say you are a mental patient, JJ. There's no way that's happening. Well, yeah, it did. And it continues today. Look at the heiress. The heiress, the Walmart heiress, Christy Walton. She funded the No Kings riots this past, 10 days, 14 days? Straight from the Walmart profits, from companies that hate you, hate what you believe in. Why would we continue to go to those box stores and buy the products from corporations that have an absolute disdain for us? And the answer is you don't. You go to patriotsmade.com/JJ. There is a corporation, a company that makes all their products in America for Americans, and they are green, meaning they don't have plastics in their food and plastics in the water and metals in their lotions. Go to patriotsmade.com/JJ. patriotsmade.com/JJ. My next guest, I'm going to go ahead and read his bio. How did I get his name is Shannon Everett. And how did I meet this gentleman? And why is this important? Well, I got a connection through Hernando Arce, right? We all love Hernando. He's been on our show, incredible investigative journalist down in Texas, focusing on the border and NGOs. He texted me and said, "Hey, man, I know you covered this topic, but I have someone that you really need to speak to." And I'm going to read his bio, okay? Shannon Everett, founder of American Truckers United, ATU. We talked about this, right? Illegal aliens, quote, they like to label them non-citizens, okay? Is a former fleet owner with over 25 years in the transportation industry, leading ATU, a faith-based advocacy group. He champions American truckers for fair wages, stricter safety regulations. He exposes labor dumping, where unqualified foreign drivers and non-domiciled CDL depress wages and increase highway fatalities. This is why I want to speak to him too. He was instrumental in securing the 2025 executive order mandating English proficiency for commercial drivers and supported Arkansas's HB 1569 and Oklahoma's SB 20 to strengthen CDL standards. I want to welcome Shannon Everett to the show. Shannon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, JJ.
Well, I have I've covered this at least 2 or 3 times on my show. As a former Border Patrol agent, I saw this happening. I worked the Interstate 5 and Interstate 15. 18-wheelers or truck fatalities have skyrocketed. I want to get to that in a moment. Tell me, I'm going to show a couple videos to my audience in a few minutes, but I want to get your overall take. What have you seen in your 25 years, and more so in probably the last 5 to 10 years, where we're seeing fatalities skyrocket by non-English speaking, non-documented or undocumented, which I know that is illegal aliens. Are you seeing an uptick in this? Is this why you're so involved now?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's an interesting perspective. I didn't know that you were involved in border patrol and inspecting trucks, and so that's great to be talking to you. Actually, so my background is 25 years of cross-border trucking, not just trucking, but my trucks were very intensely focused on crossing the border in El Paso, Laredo, and Brownsville, Texas. Also, the Ambassador Bridge up into Canada. And so I grew a business from 50 trucks to 1,000 off of the back of really our factories being exported to Mexico and to Canada. And so there were more loads to ship, there were longer miles to ship, and we really expanded the business on that. And so at one time I was crossing around 250 loads a day across the World Trade Bridge. And so I'm very familiar with immigration. I'm very familiar with the process of crossing shipments. And I have this unique perspective of all of this because I had a front row seat to kind of watching this whole situation evolve. And yes, it's definitely deteriorated rapidly in the last 5 years specifically. But the trend really started back about 10 years ago when they introduced this English proficiency memo in the Obama administration, which allowed for this behavior to kind of go unnoticed. And then it really exploded over the last 5 years. And so, you got to ask yourself, like, how do we all of a sudden have highways full of drivers that can't read and speak English? And that's because there was a trickle and then there was a flood, and we're in the flood stage right now.
No, you're absolutely correct, because I would talk to these drivers as they came through our checkpoints and such, and no one spoke English. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, how are they transversing through our interstates without anybody else speak English? They don't have English. We barely had, even in the Border Patrol, we were relying on our called them native speakers. So when you had, agricultural stops and way stations, I will guarantee you, if the Border Patrol was lacking English, Spanish speakers, I know they were. So there was no communication. I would also argue, I would say the CDL and the ODT, they just kind of threw their hands up. And the way that I can show that is I can show you a graph that maybe Logan, and before I show the videos, can you pull this graph up? This is from ATU. It's right there. And maybe you can just talk on this just for a second, Shannon, about the fatalities from 2018 to 2020, 2008 to 2022. That is shocking when you look at the percentage of trucking fatalities.
Yeah. So, one of the reasons that we started ATU is we saw that there was no voice for these crash victims and for the American truck driver when it relates to immigration in the trucking industry. And so as soon as we started ATU, we started really researching data and trying to find information on exactly what was happening. And this was one of the very first charts that we come across. You can see the source information there at the bottom right. Of course, we've added the graphics on top of this chart to highlight for you the correlation that we found. But this data comes straight from this other organization that was reporting on this increase in fatal truck accidents. And so what we wanted to do was highlight the fact that, as I was explaining a while ago, that red star highlights the period where the Obama administration issued a memorandum telling law enforcement to stand down. If a guy can't read or speak English, even though it's a federal law, do not put his truck out of service. Do not, shut the truck down. And so we believe that was a very unique policy change that was instrumental in the increase in fatal truck accidents that we're seeing on the highway today. You can also see that blue star right behind that following year. There was a regulation that was passed that required all of the truck drivers in the United States to have electronic logging systems in their trucks. And so no longer could they fill out a paper log to report to the officer how many hours they've worked in a day. It was all electronic. So you would think, naturally, that requirement, which was done for safety, would improve highway safety and we would see a reduction in fatal truck crashes. Well, you see the opposite. And so we're trying to explain here that the reason that you're seeing the opposite was because of this political correctness going on with immigration, that you have one standard for the American truck driver, and then you have this completely different standard for these immigrants, and it's made our highways a lot more dangerous. That second surge that you see is in 2021, where it really takes off. And that is the year that we have now identified that the United States, several states, there's about 10 states in total, started issuing non-domiciled CDLs to non-citizens. So the red star highlights when they started coming across the Mexican and Canadian border. The 2021 surge highlights when our own DMV started giving them CDLs. And so we've got an epidemic now in the United States because not only are they coming across our border, now they have U.S. credentials.
Yes, and that 2021, 2022, those numbers on that graph coincide exactly with the open borders. In the time of Joe Biden's term, I claimed 30 million. The federal government now is at around 21, 22 million. They just haven't come clean on the other 8 or so million. But you flood. That's one of the tentacles, the arms of illegal immigration, is the states allowing bad behavior and then allowing people that are non-citizens to drive a 18-wheeler. I mean, talk to us just maybe so the audience may not know. You don't just walk in and start driving an 18-wheeler. You have to go to, you got to have training for that. Can you give our audience some kind of idea of the type of training, and then when does someone become really proficient in this career of handling tons and tons and tons of cargo on interstates in America where people don't even know how to drive correctly in their own vehicles?
Well, yeah. So you're hauling 80,000 pounds, and so the big danger with the trucking industry is the amount of weight and the stopping distance that you have because of that weight. And so these, if not handled properly, become weapons. And so that's why we had the recent crash in Thomasville, Alabama, where you see the guy who didn't hit his brakes. I mean, it looked like a bomb went off when he plowed through those cars in that red light. And that's because these vehicles are dangerous at these weights. So learning how to manage your stopping distance, learning how to downshift your gears and manage your transmission, learning how to make sure that all of the components on the vehicle are safe, whether that's your brake chambers and your air lines or your tires and your wheels. That's a process that has to be taught and has to be the driver has to have orientation for learning how to back up and to move around. And so typically a school, I believe, is like 6 to 8 weeks. An American driver typically pays $8,000 to $10,000 for that. And then in my history, I had to go to the DMV. I had to take a written test in front of a state enforcement officer. I had to take a driving test in front of a state law enforcement officer. And so now what they've done is they've taken these schools and they've exported them to third parties. And so these guys are coming in from third world countries. They're pleading a temporary protected status, or TPS. They're getting issued these employment authorization documents. They're going to third party schools who are oftentimes managed by their own group. They go into these third-party schools, and their written test is certified, their driving test is certified, and they just go to the DMV to get the license. And so it's complete lawlessness, and so this non-domicile CDL program that was never intended to be given to non-citizens has to be banned and has to be revoked immediately. Look, we're talking about a national security issue. We've got people coming into the country who are unvetted, who are untrained. They're getting trained by their own people, their own cliques. They're unqualified, and they're just being issued these CDLs and put on the road. There was just, I don't know if you saw it on our X account, but there was a scandal busted in Florida recently of exactly what I'm describing, where guys were just paying to go to this school and be issued these CDLs. And none of them were citizens. They're paying for this license. They're not receiving any training or qualification. It's not only a public safety matter, but it's a national security matter. And I think it's a national security matter that needs to be very there needs to be a lot of focus, and it needs to be highlighted right now because of the situation we got going on in the Middle East. We've seen a lot of different groups of drivers that are going through these schools and receiving this training. I don't doubt that some of these people that they're concerned about in the Middle East are some of these truck drivers right now.
I absolutely agree with that. I think this is a national security issue. But let me show my audience just 2 videos. Logan, if you can just play these 2 videos back to back, then I'm going to get Shannon's take on it. But this is one of thousands you can find on the internet that just are truckers that are illegal aliens or whatever the hell name you want to give them. And they're just plowing through Americans in traffic. It's unbelievable. Go ahead and play this, Logan.
An 18-wheeler driver accused of causing a deadly pileup crash on I-35 in North Austin last month is now out of jail. The Travis County Sheriff's Office confirms Solomon Wadikiel Araya bonded out this afternoon. He's accused of intoxication manslaughter and intoxication assault tied to the crash that killed 5 people. Yesterday, a judge reduced his bond from just over $1 million to $7,000 after blood test results showed he did not have any drugs or alcohol in his system the night of the crash.
What do you say about that? I mean, I'm sure you, just like I have seen so much in my career in the Border Patrol, I'm sure that you have seen endless videos of these morons plowing through Americans.
Yeah, I actually just received a copy of that crash report of the first accident that was shown there in Thomasville, Alabama. That was the one I was describing a while ago. And look, both of those guys had non-domiciled CDLs. They're here on work visas. You know, they're not citizens. They've kind of flown through the CDL process, and now you see the guy in that video never even hits his brakes. And when you go to that second crash that you showed there, it was the same thing. Non-domiciled CDL. The guy was from somewhere in Africa. Got his license out of California. He's driving down in Texas. Never checks up. Same thing. Never hits his brakes. These guys are not familiar with our driving culture. They can't read our road signs. They're not familiar with what to do in a merging lane situation. And so on the second case there was the lanes, I think, went from 3 to 1 or 2 to 1. And the guy could not read the warning signs that showed that ahead of time. And so if you would have had a video of that one, I'm sure it would have been similar to this one because he plowed through almost 8 vehicles. And so we've got to get these guys off the roadways. And we've been screaming this from the mountaintops. We sent a letter to Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, 2 weeks ago, asking him to use the executive order right now on his investigation to call for a complete revocation and ban of these non-domiciled CDLs. The non-domiciled CDL was never intended to be given to non-citizens, and that's the huge discovery here. This shouldn't even be taking place. Every major executive that I talk to in the trucking industry that I have a relationship with, nobody even knew what a non-domiciled CDL was. So I've been in the industry for 25 years. I've never had a guy come apply to work for me with a non-domiciled CDL. I've never had to have a non-domiciled CDL. So when I first heard about it, it's like, what in the world is this? This is a huge scandal. This is a scam. These were never intended to be given out. What they've done is they found a way to give all of these illegal immigrants that were coming in. Look, these guys have to work. They're letting all these people in. They've got to find a way for them to work. And so that's what they did here. They found a vehicle here to put these guys to work in the trucking industry. And in doing so, they've made our roads a lot more dangerous. They've made our communities a lot more dangerous. And they've destroyed the living standard of the American truck driver. Because now, instead of American truck drivers competing with each other for lanes and for routes, they're competing with an untold number of illegal immigrants. The reason I call them non-citizen, you see my post all the time, I'm saying non-citizen, is because I'm trying to highlight the fact that that people try to say that these guys are legal because they have an EAD card. They gave EAD cards to everybody. You know, so all you had to do was come across the border and plead economic asylum or you know that you're afraid for your family because there's a war in your country, or you know, I don't know exactly what they were calling it, but I know it's pleading for asylum. And then you enter this TPS program, or temporary protected status, and they give you these employment authorization documents. It's these EAD cards that were handed out like candy. That's all they have to have. When they go to California or they go to Florida or some of these other states that we've identified, they take that EAD card in there and they give them CDLs. And so we didn't have that before 2021. So it seems like it would be a really simple request for the Trump administration to just say, hey, let's reset the clock. We know these guys are all criminals. What the administration, what they were doing here with the border. So let's just reset the clock and go back to the way it was before they got to tampering with it, which means you don't issue non-domiciled CDLs to non-citizens. And so that's step one. And then the second thing goes back to what you and I were describing of how it started. And that was with the Mexican border and the Canadian border. And what happened there was you had drivers that were typically, in my experience, I saw it firsthand. I employed drivers. I know exactly what the requirements were. They would cross the border with a load, say in Laredo, Texas, and they would stay within that economic trade zone, and they would come down there, and he would pick up that trailer, and then he would go to Detroit, Michigan, and your Mexican driver would go back to Mexico. So he was only he would come across the world, he would go to a yard, drop it, go back. He's in Laredo for 3 hours. Okay. What happened was, and maybe you can explain this better than me. I don't know what years you were there, but at some point they started letting those drivers go past the checkpoint at the 13-mile marker. So if you proceed north out of Laredo on 35, there's a check station there, an internal check station, the secondary point. And that's where they would catch the people that are supposed to just be trading and doing work in Laredo from going past that point. At some point, they started letting these truck drivers go past that point. And that was
Obama.
Yeah, it was. It was during Obama.
It was all during Obama. And this is what you touched on, and this is powerful and we need to discuss this. We only have about a minute. Is you're destroying the wage structure of the American truck driver. How do they do that? Well, instead of coming through Mexico, dropping your load, another American driver picking it up and taking it to Detroit or wherever it is, we're allowing those drivers to drive all the way in to America.
That's right.
They can't speak English, and we just let them go. So now we have third world labor structure, and now we're squeezing out the American trucker. It's absurd and it's evil what we have done. This is a great example of what open borders and the anti-American structure that runs our country, not your words but mine, that this is an example. And there's thousands of these examples, but this is a powerful one. Because you allow open borders, because you destroyed the trade, quote, trade zones, now you've increased by 79% per year chart the fatalities of trucking. We're not even just talking about truckers crashing in, illegal alien truckers crashing in to people and buildings. And now you're destroying the wage of our backbone of our truck drivers. This is unbelievable. What we have allowed as American citizens to happen to our country and to our own brothers and sisters, it's shameful. I believe it's shameful what we have allowed to happen, all for the destruction of the sovereignty of America and for greed. And that's it. It's power and wealth. That's always is. Last word, can you tell my audience, if they want to learn more, how can they learn more? Where do they find you on X, and where can they find your organization, ATU?
Yeah, please go to our website at americantruckers.com. You can register whether you're a truck driver, a concerned citizen, or a shipper. There's a spot for everyone to register just to stay up to date on our newsletters and what we're doing legislatively. And then also follow us on social media. Almost all accounts. The handle is at ATU Truckers, ATU Truckers. And you can find us there. And I would just add, two of the largest ports in the country now are controlled by non-citizens: Laredo, Texas, and Los Angeles.
Is that unbelievable? When you start diving into ports of entry, and you realize our government has sold away our control of our country. We're the most vulnerable. Let me ask you this as a last question. I make the statement that America has never been this vulnerable in the history of her existence. Do you agree with that, or do you think that's hyperbole?
I believe that wars are won through logistics and being fast, efficient supply chains. Getting the equipment there, getting the bullets there, getting the food there. And so, absolutely, we are in a very dangerous position right now when the two largest ports in the country are no longer controlled by Americans.
Shannon, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I hope you come back and we'll talk about this, because this is not going away tomorrow. This is going to be a problem in America for quite some time. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Shannon Everett, ATU, American Truckers. Go follow him. He is absolutely spot on. When you realize the depths of the treason, it will shock you. It will just shock you. Illegal aliens that don't speak English from third world countries are driving our trucks. Just go on there. I hate Google. We go on X and just type in trucking fatalities, illegal aliens in X search bar, and then watch videos explode on your screen, and you're gonna be like, "What? I didn't even know this was happening." Oh yeah, yes it is. Man, it's a fast show. We got 5 minutes left. Sat123.com, Sat123.com. We have wars exploding in the Middle East. Wars are coming to our nation. We have Chris from Sat123 comes on our show every week on Fridays, and we talk about this. We talk about being prepared. We talk about the cell towers going down. We talk about the infrastructure attacks. You think Iran is going to attack us through their special interest alien cadre that they brought over? And you think China's not, once that chaos ensues, you don't think China's going to activate their PLA soldiers that are here? This isn't blackpilling. This is just straight up the truth. I hate that term, blackpilling. That's always, I always get that when I'm talking to someone that doesn't want to know the truth. Oh, stop, you're blackpilling. It's doom and gloom. No, we're here in this doom and gloom because of the committee of stupidity, which you're one of them. You feel safe in your ignorance. This is just the truth. You think Shannon's lying about the fatality increase of 79% of trucker fatalities? You saw the video. That's just one video of thousands where the guy, there's no vehicles left. He plowed through 3 that we saw, but he carried into 8. 3 vehicles, they disintegrated. They didn't exist in that video after the truck ran through it. You need to be prepared. One way is sat phone. Be able to see the sky. You have connectability. Go to sat123.com/JJ, sat123.com/JJ. I have this video. I'm going to show you. I'm just going to show you. This is Bannon, Steve Bannon. And he's talking about something that I think has to happen. And that's special prosecutors. And the reason I say that is the DOJ is just, I think they're overwhelmed. I don't think they have the facilities. I don't think they have the manpower. And one way to augment that is special prosecutor, and allow that special prosecutor to dive deep into a certain topic. And Matt Gaetz might be that person. Listen to Steve Bannon make this pitch to Donald Trump for Matt Gaetz type individuals.
Do we miss Gaetz? I love Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi's, I love her. But I do wish that Matt was the Attorney General, right?
Maybe we need him back in Congress.
Well,
stir some stuff up in
I
there.
think President Trump, hang on, President Trump tweeted out, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to say it was after my lunch, but President Trump tweeted out on True Social that it's time to get a special prosecutor on top of the stolen election of 2020. Now we know the CCP is in there. And that would get into, and that would get into 6 January. It would get into, all of it. I can't think of a better guy than Matt Gaetz. Can you?
Not off the top of my head.
He's a warrior.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
His show's a much-watched show also. I mean, the content's incredible. Vish has done a great job, but Matt is a unique personality. Okay.
We're talking about, he was mentioned the 2020 election. Can you show this, not this one, but the next John Solomon clip? Just show about 35, 40 seconds of it, if you don't mind, talking about the 2020 election FBI bombshell. And think about a special prosecutor on this. Can you just show me about 30, 40 seconds of this, Logan?
Tell the audience what Cash delivered last night and what the reality is here, because this is about as jaw-dropping as you can get, sir.
Yeah, let's set the stage. Let's remind everybody that in December of 2020, 60 Minutes aired a piece with the head of the Homeland Security Cybersecurity Division saying there were no foreign intrusions in the 2020 election. It was a perfectly clean election. He said, I think it was Chris Krebs was his name. We now know that to have been a false proclamation. First, we know a year later in 21, a bunch of Iranians were indicted in Manhattan on charges that they interfered in the election and hacked into a state database to obtain voter IDs and use them in a mal-influence operation against the American election. Now we know there was a second country that was more deeply involved in meddling into the election. The FBI in August 2020, so 3.5 months before the votes were cast, that put Joe Biden.
That's John Solomon, excellent reporter. Just so we're very clear that when the crazies come out and say, well, the election wasn't stolen, everyone voted for Joe Biden, they loved him. Let me just remind you of who we all fell in love with and got 20 more million phantom votes. Go and play this quick clip of Joe Biden.
That Netanyahu should go.
Yep, that's the individual 20 million Americans voted for. 20 extra million that voted for Joe Biden. Wake up, America. We are in a war on all fronts, and now just add Iran to that conglomerate of insanity that we have been living through and are living through today.